everyone, and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel, and today I'm joined by my eternal Millennium co-host, Tanner Dykstra, and today we're here to talk about Y2K, a new film that we have seen. I honestly don't know how to categorize this film, and I'm gonna sort of talk about that as we review. But of course, if you have seen this film and want to talk to us about it, you can leave a comment down in the comment section or join our Discord server, which has a link in the description. Of course, subscribe and like the video and ring the bell and everything. Tanner?
Do the things, the YouTube things.
Yeah. Tanner, we've seen Y2K. You and I, and we're here to give our thoughts. How do you feel about this movie?
Tucker, I'm going to describe my thoughts on this film with an action. And you can sort of interpret this, okay?
Our little interpretive dance. Oh, okay. It's symbolic, yeah.
Yeah. Tucker is a real stinker for me. I did not enjoy this film. It was a steady and also steep decline, I think, from the opening minutes and to the end of this film.
Are those not juxtaposed against each other?
I don't know. Opposites? I said both. It's it's more steady than steep, I think. Sure. Because as I was watching, I was like, the opening minutes, first act of this film, I was like, this is pretty fun. It's pretty good. It's corny. It's reference filled, but also I was like, for a moment that was getting to me, I was like, well, what the fuck did I expect from fucking Y2K? Of course, it's going to be all references. And then we get into the second act, and it is super strangely paced. The characterization is all over the board. And then we get into the third act, and I think there's even some deeper issues revealed about, like, what the film is trying to be about at its core. And the ending notes of that characterization are really sour to me. So not a lot that I like out of Y2K. But what did you think, Tucker?
I think I'm on the same page as you. And I was thinking about this as I was sort of formulating my thoughts during this movie. And I think your point about the pacing is apt because this is a 90-minute movie. It should, by all measures, fly by. But I actually think this movie manages to drag in a 90-minute, less than 90-minute, counting credits, runtime, because that middle part of the movie is just incredibly slow. And while I was watching this slow section of the film, I was sitting back and I was thinking, okay, I don't like this very much. But I think that everyone involved with this should be proud. And I thought of it in this way. I see this as... And I'm not going to, like, completely dog on this movie, and I want to stipulate, I think everyone involved with this movie should be proud. Because I view this movie as, like, a high production value, theatrically released, like, YouTube movie. Like original YouTube movie. It really
feels like that, yeah.
And to me, what that means is this is a group of friends referencing things from their childhood, having fun, writing jokes about things that might not make sense too much to everyone else, and everything's kind of corny and it's kind of slapdash together, but it's about the act of just having fun making a movie together. And so I could feel that energy from the filmmakers, from the cast and crew, like having a good time on this set, goofing around, coming up with these ideas like, ooh, what if this happened? What if we made this joke? What if we, like, reference this old movie? And I really respect that energy. And I think that they did it, they made it, it went to theaters. But also, I have to put on my critical cap as a film critic. I've reviewed hundreds of movies here on YouTube, and I have to say I don't think this is a very good movie. I think the dialogue is really bad. I think it's poorly paced. I think that a lot of the themes don't make sense, as you said. To top it all off, I think it's not funny. This is a movie that from the trailer, I thought was going to be sort of a horror comedy, like The End of the World or like Shaun of the Dead or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think it tries to be that, but maybe just because I was not born in this era and a lot of the references aren't like directly like aimed towards me, it felt corny and ham-fisted and almost none of the jokes landed. I think the only joke that made me laugh, let's see if we're on the same page for this one.
All right.
It's a moment where the stoner guy is like, hey, why don't you look up, like, is it okay if your dad left you when you were young?
Yes. Okay, so Tucker, I'll fill you in a little bit since you perhaps out of the loop. The stoner character, the video store guy, is Kyle Mooney, the director and writer of this film.
Yeah.
SNL alum, sort of infamous for having his sketches cut from SNL and having sort of this cult following of people who like love Kyle Mooney. His stuff shouldn't be cut from SNL. People tapped into his brand of comedy, and that joke is very much the Kyle Mooney brand of comedy. What do you do if your dad doesn't like you or whatever? What do you do if your dad's not around?
Yeah.
And he kind of looks around and he's like, don't worry about me.
That was
and,
a good
I was
moment.
I like that one a lot. It's probably the best joke in the movie because it is pure, unadulterated Kyle Mooney comedy timing and comedy writing. So, good stuff there. Otherwise, this is a lot of, like you already mentioned, pop culture, turn to the Millennium, 99, 2000 referencing things. It's hard and heavy and fast in the first, 20 minutes. I think because they're really listen, we're getting you in the era right now. We open on AOL, aim away messages. The song, I don't remember what the opening song is, but
there's downloading old music and downloading videos. And...
It's like an in-screen, we're opening Winamp. We got aim away messages. We're watching Bill Clinton in 144p or on Yahoo News or something. I don't know. And then we go to hang on, I gotta pull up the kid's name because it's Jaden Martell is our main character, and then Julian Dennison.
Yeah,
thank you.
As Danny,
he's doing
I believe, or Danny.
Yeah, he's doing Tybo with his mom, so all the 90s stuff is coming at you fast in the first 20 minutes.
And both of their bedrooms are just completely decked out in as much 90s nonsense as you can get. Which, again, to your point, I was not sold on this. It wasn't I this is really ingratiating me into this world, but I'm this is the bit of the movie, I'm okay with it.
Right. It was like I already mentioned, it was a little grating to me, but I came around and was this is what this movie is going to be, obviously. We go to the video store and I'm and listen, I'm a movie nerd. I'm like, ooh, what are the titles on the shelves here?
Yeah, of course. So
I was obviously that's what I'm in. I'm tapped into this,
Ruthless People.
the same thing.
They chose Junior, which is the lesser of the Dan DeVito and
of course, but the newer one, it's the one they were more interested in, but no, it's like this classic sort of super bad narrative where they're these two losers in high school. It's New Year's, we gotta go out and party and get laid. It's a classic teen raunchy comedy sort of thing. And I think this first 30 minutes is pretty solid when we're in that raunchy comedy teen movie kind of deal. We have Rachel Zegler established. We're into her. She's the popular girl, but she has some tendencies. She's a computer whiz, so she's not like the other popular kids at school.
It's all pretty stock standard, but it's there. But I will say that there's one element of this that is missing, and I think it's probably a budgeting thing, which is we never see them go to school. We never see
they're on winter break.
True. Oh, I guess it is. Okay,
but Tucker, I'm right there with you though.
But the dynamic, the social dynamic of high school life and of how do people treat them at school, and how is Rachel Zegler's character treated at school as the popular kid? We never actually get that physically established. It's really all people referencing, oh, she's the popular kid, and you're like, well, why? I never really see that. It's oh, well, everyone hates you. You kind of see that as they get picked on.
It's a matter of timing, of course, of they want this to be a punchy 90 minutes, and so it would feel a bit weighed down if you had them go to school and then you had to do a time jump to when they're on winter break for New Year's and everything. So I'm right there with you though, Tucker. I think a lot of background is missing, especially for Rachel Zegler. Maybe it was just because I am the most ingratiated to like her as a performer in this film. I've seen other films starring Julian Dennison, Jaden Martell. I'm not as hot on those films where their performances in them. Whereas Rachel Zegler is a very promising up-and-coming star, and so I wanted to learn more about her. But of the three main, I say three main things. Should we spoil Y2K, Tucker? Should we say spoilers for Y2K?
Let's talk about Y2K as we're rounding out this opening section. This opening section, which is solid. Which I want to point out, I think one of the main strengths of this movie for the opening 30 minutes is that Julian Dennison and Jaden Martell, I think they have good chemistry. They're believable. I think so too. As a pair of friends. I like their little in-jokes and their handshake and everything.
It's classic stuff.
It's committed to the bit, and it's solid. But as we transition into Y2K is happening, the robots are attacking us, the electronics are coming to life. I like the scene where everyone's getting killed at the party and stuff.
I think that first attack is quite good and is the best that the apocalypse comedy stuff gets in this film.
100%.
We start at a high there.
Yes. So it's a nice little ramp up to okay, I'm established in this world. I like these two characters as buddies. The social dynamic isn't fully set, but whatever, I get it. Okay, cool. Horror moment at a party.
Yeah, it's gory but campy at the same time.
And
There's
then we get the
Tamagotchi
apocalypse
drills
section. which is the middle, like 3/5 of this movie, it feels like, which is just kind of palling around the woods with like the lamest side characters I've ever seen in my life.
Weird. And this is why I wanted to talk about spoilers. So I guess spoilers from here on out for Y2K. It's the basic premise of what you see in the trailers is what we've talked about already. And that's the best part of the movie. Yeah. Because at like the 30-minute mark, Julian Dennison's character is killed. Yes. And I was like, oh, that's really weird.
Yeah, it is.
He is like the sidekick character I thought he was going to be throughout this entire thing. Maybe he sacrifices himself at the end. Yeah. But it never crossed my mind that the second lead of this movie, or third lead even, would die 30 minutes in. Mm-hmm. And then we also have this actor, hang on, I have to find his name, Eduardo Franco, who's been in a couple things. He's in Booksmart, he's in Stranger Things. Yeah. Also well known for his like stoner stereotype comedy character. Mm-hmm. Dies like...
He's the new Jay.
like 2 minutes later.
Yeah. Well, in a surprisingly funny like moment. But yeah, so there are these characters that are set up, and what we're left with is Jaden Martell, who I think loses a lot of his intrigue when his buddy dies, and their chemistry is gone.
Becomes quite unlikable for the rest of the film.
Yeah, and because he's kind of just a wiener who never like.
I agree.
And then Rachel Zegler, who I think is the best performance in this movie, and I think her character, like personality wise and backstory wise and conflict wise, is probably the most interesting character in the movie. And then we're just like surrounded by these like characters that are kind of half introduced earlier.
There's two. There's Bucket Hat Guy, who's like into like niche hip hop. Yeah. And then there's one of the lackeys of Eduardo Franco's character, who's really into Fred Durst and Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
And they have like a relationship, kind of.
They try.
It's real flat.
It's real flat, and then we're introduced back to the Kyle Mooney character, who I think he's funny. He's a classic like bit side character, and I enjoy him in this movie. But then there's like the rest of the collective who are just not very interesting, and Rachel Zegler's ex, who's not very interesting. He's the guy from Scream 5 and 6.
Yes.
And I'm like, why are there all these people in this movie? Like it feels like trying to do a stoner comedy halfway mixed with a slasher film where we got to just have this group of bodies that can be picked through over the course of the movie, but they're also introduced like stair-step ways through the movie. There's never a group dynamic.
The tone of this film is, I think, and the tonal confusion is really something that the film struggles with and really alienated me. Where I was like, what is this film trying to be? Like, it's invoking a lot of these genre conventions, but also sort of like shrugging them off or undercutting them, but not really giving you anything to replace that. So it just kind of feels piecemeal of like odds and ends of different types of movies jammed together to be a really non-compelling product here for me at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, because I think that at face value and structure-wise, this movie is supposed to be a comedy. It's also sort of be a slasher thing, as I was mentioning.
Right.
But runtime-wise for the movie, especially because I feel like a lot of the jokes don't work for me. Like, I probably only laughed like once or twice in this movie. It kind of just feels like an uncompelling drama. Like, these characters get these moments where they're like connecting and they're like trying to share these moments with each other, or like staring off into the distance or being jealous of relationships. And I'm like, you haven't earned this. I don't know who these characters are really.
There are 1.5 acts of those scenes repeated over and over again. We get our initial attack scene, and then our two of our who appear to be like members of the gang die immediately, and then you're into like 10-15 minutes of our characters like kicking around rocks or sitting on swings or looking at a lake and talking about their feelings, which I'm not opposed to. I think that stuff was good, but it has to appear at appropriate times in your narrative, in your script, when things have been built up to. Like, after your characters die, after the initial thing is when you get your running through the town, what's going on, we're establishing locations and other side characters and everything, and then we can maybe pump the brakes. It feels like we hit the brakes way too early in this movie and never really fully let up until the last 10 minutes.
Well, and I think that comes to the sort of emotional pacing of this movie, which is just the screenplay on the whole, which, again, I don't think the dialogue largely works. I think there's a lot of drama moments that don't feel like they're led up to. Again, I don't think the comedy hits almost any of the time. But it really is that pacing where we're out of that sequence that we praised, and then the characters they're like kind of worried, but they're not freaking out. They're just kind of chilling and like walking slowly through the woods and like ribbing each other a little bit. I'm like, this isn't the time for any of this. Like, there's no like emotional reaction to these things. Like, it's half there, but it just really doesn't land. And then they lazily like slide their way through a couple of locations. Like, yeah, let's go to the barn. Yeah, and then they go to the barn. It's like, oh, and then the robot shows up. Like, why is a robot there? That doesn't really make a lot of sense.
And then we have this horribly ham-fisted, like, the relationship I like you come clean thing. Yeah. That's like so forced, where he's like, that's the girl of my dreams. Yeah. And like, that's as close as he gets to having an enjoyable, non-tense moment with Rachel. I'm talking about Jaden Martell and Rachel Zegler's character here. Yeah. There's no other moment where they like connect, really, like, or where the connection feels believable. Because going back to what I said earlier, I don't like his character. Yeah. He's really whiny. He's a wiener. There's the misunderstanding trope here where he sees her talking to her ex and is like, well, you just like being with the popular kids. Yeah. And then, I don't know, how does that resolve? Oh yeah, it resolves itself because they show up and save them from the big giant robot. Yeah. It's just so focused on like giving you these characters and building the relationships, but at the same time not giving any time to that, because I think it's so confused of like how fast we want to get to action sequences versus how fast we want to get to the emotional beats. And they're it's just a very staggered and confused film, pacing wise and tonally, like I mentioned.
Yeah. And then all of this is also wrapped up in the film's like real identity, which is we're making 90s references. We're making jokes. The characters are quoting things. They're talking about 90s internet and culture and slang and weed. And all these things largely just undercut the actual plot of the movie. Like, the plot of the movie is this apocalypse is happening, and the electronics are like building themselves into robots to like take over the world. And look, the reason I was excited to see this movie is because, number one, I liked Rachel Zegler, and I think this is a fun concept.
I think so too.
A comedy horror film. Yeah. But the movie just kind of unconcerned with that in so many of its sequences where the characters are just kind of sitting around, and I'm like, well, what about like the interesting part of the movie? And whenever we're sitting down and actually something's happening where the robots are showing up and we're looking at like these 90s animated sequences, internet-y things, it is so stuffed with like poking at references things.
Yeah, it's like, hey, 90s, like only 90s kids, only 90s kids will remember these 3D models that were kind of around, like the I'm Blue music video. Didn't that look weird, 90s kids? What if that was like taking over the world, herpty-derp?
Yeah, totally.
Bad stuff. Did not enjoy it. Again, those sequences, nothing feels earned or well paced in any of these things. Yeah, any of these moments.
Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate because, again, I think this concept is compelling. The idea of what if this actually did happen, and then with 20 plus years removed from it, we can make fun of it a little bit. We can make these references, even if it is corny, even if it is a little bit ham-fisted with those references. This idea is solid enough to where you could see this being done by a Judd Apatow type and being really goddamn funny and interestingly biting about the way that people thought about computers at the time.
This movie is like produced by Jonah Hill, so like we have some things coming from that camp, that comedic mind. Yeah. But to cut a little deeper past like the reference comedy of this, it is a movie that is ultimately kind of about liking what you like unapologetically, because there's a lot of the comedy is derived from like, aren't these things from the 90s that we liked and were obsessed with stupid?
Kind of, yeah.
But then they tried to resolve that a little bit with like, hey, you know, if you enjoyed it, if it brought you happiness, was it really that dumb? We don't need to, you know, look back on this with shame necessarily. Mm-hmm. But then it's so obsessed with making this ironic commentary on everything that doesn't at all feel genuine.
Yeah. And Tanner, let's talk about the biggest element of that. Okay. Which is Fred Durst.
Yes.
As
Fred Durst
major
as
supporting
Fred Durst.
character in this film. Who shows up out of the darkness and is suddenly a part of the movie that they cannot stop making jokes about. I mean, I guess if I was writing a movie and I could get a big guy, like a big pop star that I was a big fan of from the time, I would also be making constant references.
Right.
So I
They always refer to him as Fred Durst by his full name. They never call him Fred. They're just like, well, what are you doing here, Fred Durst?
Yeah.
What do you think, Fred Durst?
And that's where I feel like, it almost feels like that was the idea of the movie. Like, get all this stuff happening. Okay, Y2K, I mean, I'm sure that was the original idea of the movie, but when they're like, ooh, we could get Fred Durst to do this and make jokes about Fred Durst and have him in our movie, well, let's just make sure everything's set up for that. We're referencing Limp Bizkit constantly before that. And then the third act of the movie is surprisingly centered around him being a prominent supporting character, which is, again, he's not a part of the crew building up to that. And again, this is the pacing issue in the screenplay issue where our gang of characters aren't a gang at the beginning. They're kind of a gang in the middle, and they're not really a gang at the end. Like, where you get introduced to certain characters at weird stair-step times throughout the film, and that includes Fred Durst, who's not introduced at all until the end of the movie.
Yeah, there's like radio ads that are like, hey, Limp Bizkit's gonna be in town or whatever. Yeah. But no, I think you're right, and this is something that there's a couple of things in this movie that really stupidly and minutely frustrated me.
Sure.
And I want to recount them to you. And one of them is related to Fred Durst.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Tucker, I'm one to enjoy like the really bro-y 90s rock of this era. Sure. Okay. Limp Bizkit is lumped in there. I like to listen to Limp Bizkit. I think it's like really driving fun music. And they obviously, as you would, choose to do a needle drop of a Limp Bizkit song in this film. It's Break Stuff. You know, their seminal classic hit Break Stuff.
Yeah, the scene in the video store.
Yes, and this frustrated me to no end.
Why is that scene in the movie?
Yeah, exactly. Well, why that scene serves no purpose. And when it happened, I was like, you wasted like the beating the robots up song.
True.
You wasted.
Oh, that's a good
There's also
point.
not a scene of them beating up the robots.
No,
which I also think this movie is lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. But instead, at the end, they do fucking George Michael's Faith. Fred Durst breaks out an acoustic guitar and sings Faith by George Michael. So I'm like, if you want to have this movie that is about liking what you like, the cringy stuff of the 90s, of which Limp Bizkit is like a number one thing that people point to as like this stupid shit that sucks now, actually. Do that. Have him rally the town, because you do the joke of none of them like Limp Bizkit, none of them are like on board with Fred Durst being there. Do the thing where he rallies the town and they all beat up the robots to break stuff. It's like, we can cut loose, have fun, be really emboldened, and wrap ourselves up in this 90s corny stuff. But no, we do like the seminal pop hit that's still really popular today. And that's why we do it, is because people in 2024 know and like it, George Michael's Faith.
Sure.
I don't know. I feel like I went on a weird rant there, and I have another one coming. I have another one coming about
just do it now, and then we can kind of wrap it up.
So, Tucker, this is a pop culture reference-filled film that takes place, at least partially, in the film 1999.
The year, but it's okay.
Yes. What did I say?
You said in the film 1999.
Oh, sorry. In the movie, in the year 1999. Yes. This movie takes place, at least partially, in the year 1999, and most of it in the year 2000.
We understand what you're saying.
I digress. It is about a robot uprising where it is revealed a part of their ultimate plan is to enslave humans for their larger purpose. And not a single fucking character mentions the film The Matrix, which came out in summer 1999.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
What are we doing?
There's also no Terminator references in this movie.
There is, and this is what really fucking irks me about the No Matrix thing. Tucker, what happens when fucking bucket hat hip hop kid dies? When he gets those CDs embedded in his face?
He starts rapping.
What movie did they reference?
They do a I never thought I would die by the side of like the guy. What's the fucking quote?
That is from the film Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, which comes out in the year 2003. That movie's not out yet. Why are we referencing Lord of the Rings: Return of the King and not even nary a fucking mention of The Matrix? What is going on? What is going on?
I don't really understand it. And I think that moment also combined with this really weird recurring bit that's like the only reason why Bucket Hat character is in the movie is that like, oh man, rap and flow and cringy rap and flow and like half-heartedly starting a rap and then stopping it a little bit too early and like owning the fact that at least you tried to do something. That moment combined with the fact that we gotta jam in a reference that people now understand, of course, as you mentioned, not technically topical to the time or possible to reference in the time accurate time period. Not that that didn't bug me too much. I'm like, it's a movie now, so like whatever.
I understand,
but but that moment with that character that I don't care about doing a bit that I found annoying is kind of all of my issues of this movie kind of in one section. It's like you introduce this character in like the background of a scene and he's not particularly interesting. He never really gets an interesting moment. And then when he sacrifices himself to save Fred Durst, he leans back into this bit that he's been doing of doing a beat or doing like a freestyle rap that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, that's not like I don't feel anything now. Like I'm just kind of annoyed in this moment, and that's consistently what the film does. It tries to have these dramatic moments where the characters are friends now. Like there's this moment where Laura, Rachel Zegler's character, shows up and she's like, "Hey, robot, don't hurt them. These people are my friends." I'm like, what are you talking about?
Are they? The last interaction you had with one of these people is Jaden Martell's character being like, "Fuck you. You just want to be friends with the popular kids. I'm out of here."
Yeah, and you don't know these people.
You didn't get along with any of them previously because that is the only way these characters interact with Rachel Zegler, like for 2/3 of this movie, is you're just like all the popular kids. When, as we talked about like earlier, we never get her being like rude to them, hanging out with her friends. She's just nice to them, and all these other characters just have a grudge towards her, and it makes you not like all the other characters because you as an audience member like Rachel Zegler. She is very charming and personable and has been in very popular films where she's good in them.
Yeah.
And you're not earning in yourself any goodwill writing your characters to hate a character that the audience has no reason to dislike.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially given the fact that the interesting part about her character is, okay, context-wise, and like they continually say that she's the popular girl, and she mentioned it herself, so I believe it in the world of the film.
Sure.
But we never see it. And what we do see
is
that she's a nerd.
Thing. You want to tell, don't show. That's the famous thing about filmmaking.
But she's a nerd, and she's really into computer hacking, and she's like just like having fun with her friends in a basement, and she's like kind of standing by the staircase by herself at the party, like. We never see, like, even in the sections where she could be, like, the life of the party and have everyone around her, she's just, like, a normal, charming person. And so all this, like, conflict between the characters, and I guess I can kind of maybe understand the intent is that they see her as maybe more popular than she is, or a mere distance than she actually is, and so they like, project that. But I don't find that to be particularly compelling because we never even get the, as we've been saying, the establishment of what the reality is of her being, like, popular or distanced from these characters. As far as I know, she like DMs or whatever Jaden Martell like pretty consistently, and they're
friends,
kind of, but also he consistently says they're not. It's really hard to tell what this movie wants between its characters and where it wants to do a reference bit or a joke or have a drama bit, and it just kind of all mashes together into something that's like. I'm just sitting there just like, the entire time. It's just, it doesn't come together at the end of the day.
Yeah. I like that we do an alternate history where Fred Durst is a multi-billionaire tech owner and also a senator.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
That's pretty good. I like that. Yeah, I mean, Y2K is good for a laugh every now and then, and was really promising with its stars and its creators, its director, writer, Kyle Mooney, and I think that he is consistently the best part of this movie, where the other characters, the main characters, should be. We should like them, we should be on board with their vibe and their dynamic, but we never get there, we don't set it up, and we don't pay it off, and it's very tonally confused of where it wants to go and what it wants to be. Wholly unsuccessful in my mind as a horror comedy. What did you think?
Yeah. I think that this movie feels like a YouTube original movie. It is a fun time to make this movie with your friends, but on the other side, as an audience member, I didn't laugh. I didn't feel the stakes. I didn't enjoy the characters. There were fleeting moments of comedy and drama that I thought were fine, but at the end of the day, I come out the other end with nothing to glom onto other than this is about references to the 90s.
Yeah. 3.5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I would say 4 out of 10. I think it's just kind of blah. Like, it's not aggressively bad. I wasn't like cringing completely at these performances. I think everyone does. Like, they're committed to the bit. You can tell where the direction is going, and I certainly don't blame any of the actors for like the dialogue being weird or anything. But it's inexperienced directing is what it is. It's like, I have this idea for a movie,
and screenwriting for that matter.
I
think Kyle Mooney, this isn't his first film either. It is his first film. He wrote something else, I think.
Brigsby Bear.
Yes, yeah, which is by all accounts pretty good.
Yeah, it's odd, and obviously he's a screenwriter for like bits, like SNL.
Yeah, he's an SNL writer.
Yeah, and we've seen those SNL movies be good in the past. It's been a long time, but
well, yes.
But I thought it was. I didn't think it was that good, and I'm disappointed to say that because I thought that the trailer and the concept were interesting, but in execution, it just kind of falls apart.
Yeah. I had a couple rants in here, but I think they're emblematic of how confused the film is overall. So, yeah, stinker as I opened my my reactions with real PU. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sticking along with us through this review, folks. Let us know what you thought of Y2K. If you think we're off base, if you're a '90s kid and this one really gelled with you, let us know down in the comments or join our Discord server. Link in the description. You can talk about movies in general with us there. Otherwise, we'll be around for more reviews in the future.
Thanks for watching.